XM177 Commando carbine. Back in the Vietnam War, American soldiers were fighting in thick jungles, jumping out of helicopters, or riding in cramped vehicles. The regular M16 rifle was too long and clunky for that. It got caught on vines and was awkward in tight spaces. So the military asked Colt to make a shorter version of the AR15. That's how the XM177 Commando, also called the AR15 Commando, was born. The first big official upgrade to make the rifle super compact. Its predecessor is M177E1 with a 10-inch barrel, and the updated version is XM177E2, which stretched it to 11.5 inches for better performance. They added a long flash hider like a big muzzle brake to reduce the huge fireball and super loud bang from the short barrel. It also had a collapsible stock, making the whole gun only about 29 to 32 inches long when shortened, way easier to handle than the 39-inch M16. The Army bought over 2,800 E1s and around 500 E2s, mostly for special forces, Air Force Guards, and elite units. They even called it a submachine gun due to its size. The E1 didn't have a forward assist, that button to jam the bolt forward if it sticks, but the E2 added it plus a stronger front sight. Sure, it had downsides. The bullet flew slower, less range and power at distance, massive flash, and it could jam in mud like early M16s. But soldiers loved how light and quick it was in close fights. The XM177 showed everyone that a short 5.56mm rifle worked great, paving the way for today's M4 carbine. M16A1. By 1969, the U.S. Army fully embraced the AR15 design after early hiccups. The new M16A1 brought key fixes to make it reliable in combat. It added a forward assist, a button on the side that a soldier could use to push a stuck bolt fully home. The M16A1 also got a chrome-plated barrel and chamber, resisting heat and fouling. The flimsy fiberglass handguards were replaced with reinforced aluminum and plastic. The old 3-prong flash hider was upgraded to a sturdier model. These tweaks meant the rifle could fire many rounds without jamming in jungle mud and sweat. Troops noticed the difference immediately. Marines and soldiers in Vietnam found the M16A1 just kept working, even under intense fire. It still fired full auto and used the same magazines, but it ran much smoother. Soldiers could now focus on targets instead of clearing jams. The M16A1 became the standard U.S. rifle through the 1970s. Millions were produced, and troops came to trust it. This showed the AR-15's potential as a durable infantry weapon. This era also saw widespread adoption of the 30-round magazine, since the rifle was now reliable enough to use more ammo. However, planners were already thinking ahead. NATO adoption of a heavier 5.56mm round and the need for even greater range pointed to the next upgrade. That step was the M16A2. M16A2. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, the U.S. military was looking for a tougher evolution of the AR-15 that could fully support the NATO standard 5.56mm cartridge. That search led to the M16A2. Officially adopted by the Marine Corps in 1983 and by the Army in 1986, the A2 represented a major redesign rather than a simple update. It featured a heavier, thicker barrel with a faster twist rate to stabilize the newer SS-109 M855 round. This change improved both accuracy and effective range, allowing soldiers to engage targets reliably well past 500 meters. The sighting system was also upgraded. The rear sight became fully adjustable for both windage and elevation, while the front sight post was slightly raised. A case deflector was added on the receiver to prevent spent brass from striking left-handed shooters. Ergonomics improved as well, with a redesigned pistol grip and a stock that offered a more solid cheek weld during aiming. One of the most controversial changes appeared in the fire control system. Full automatic fire was replaced by a 3-round burst mode. Each trigger pull now releases exactly 3 rounds, a choice meant to conserve ammunition and promote controlled fire. In real-world use, the M16A2 proved rugged and dependable. The heavier barrel resisted heat buildup, and troops could sustain accurate fire for longer periods. Marines and soldiers during Desert Storm often remarked on how solid and durable the rifle felt. All of these refinements turned the A2 into a reliable and effective service rifle. The Army also produced a limited M16A3 variant, essentially an A2 with full auto restored, but it saw only narrow use. By this point, the AR15 platform had clearly matured, and attention soon shifted toward the next evolution, the optics-ready M16A4. M16A3. The M16A3 is one of those rifles that almost feels like a footnote, yet it hides a few details that tend to surprise people. It looked exactly like an M16A2, same 20-inch barrel, same fixed carry handle, same handguards and furniture. What sets it apart from the alternative is the return of true, full automatic fire. Instead of the 3-round burst system, the A3 used a true, full auto trigger group, allowing continuous fire as long as the trigger was held. That alone made it closer in spirit to the original Vietnam-era M16 than many people realize. The M16A3 was never meant for frontline infantry. It appeared mainly in U.S. Navy and Marine security roles, especially aboard ships and at fixed installations. In those environments, accuracy at long range mattered less than the ability to quickly put out a high volume of fire in tight corridors or during emergency defense situations. For that mission, full auto made more sense than burst. Another lesser-known detail is that the A3 quietly avoided one of the biggest complaints about the A2, the inconsistent trigger feel caused by the burst cam. Many shooters disliked how the trigger pull changed depending on where the burst cycle stopped. The A3 eliminated that issue entirely by going back to a simpler mechanism, which some users found smoother and more predictable. Despite these advantages, the M16A3 was never widely issued. It filled a narrow role and remained a low-profile variant. Still, it represents an interesting moment when the military briefly reconsidered full auto before shifting focus toward something more transformative. Optics, rails, and modularity, paving the way for the M16A4. M16A4. The M16A4 arrived as a clear pivot point in the AR family, the model where optics and mission modularity stopped being optional and became standard. Introduced in the late 1990s, the most visible change was the flat-top upper receiver with a full-length Picatinny rail. That single change lets a soldier clamp on an ACOG, red dot, night optic, or magnified scope in seconds, and keep zero much more reliably than the old carry handle setup. The A4 kept the A2's 20-inch chrome-lined barrel and its 1-in-7 twist rate optimized for the heavier NATO 62-grain round, so ballistics stayed familiar. What changed was how you outfitted the rifle. Block 2 variants added a 4-sided quad-rail handguard that accepted grips, lights, lasers, and bipods. Suddenly, one base rifle could be a marksman's tool in one mission, a patrol carbine in the next, or a night ops platform the following week. On the battlefield, adaptability mattered. Troops in the 2000s could swap optics between units and missions without sending weapons to armorers. Forward observers and designated marksmen used the A4's flat top to mount low-power variable optics that blurred the line between carbine and DMR, said as DMR. A wow detail. The M16A4's rail era helped normalize commercial accessories into military doctrine. The same rail standards used on civilian rifles now fit on frontline troops' gear. That convergence sped up upgrades and cut training friction. The A4 also proved the AR could accept significant add-ons without losing its core shootability. But modularity begged a follow-on question. What happens when you bolt on explosive firepower? That next shift brought the underbarrel grenade launcher into common use. M203 Grenade Launcher. The M203 was the field answer to a simple problem. Give a rifleman explosive reach without forcing him to carry an extra weapon. Debuting in 1967, the M203 is a single-shot, underbarrel 40 by 46 mm low-velocity grenade launcher that mounts under the rifle's barrel and uses a separate trigger and pistol grip. Put plainly, it turns a rifleman into a mini artilleryman. The round set, think of it as a compact, low-velocity grenade, offers a point-target effective range roughly within 150 meters and an area effect well past that. Unlike dedicated grenade systems, the M203 lets a soldier switch instantly from grenades to rifle fire, and it accepts a wide palette of rounds: high explosive fragmentation, buckshot, illumination, smoke, and even non-lethal munitions for crowd control. Operationally, the M203 changed tactics. Squads could engage enemies behind cover or force them from trenches without calling mortars. A single rifleman could suppress or shape a firefight at standoff distances that bullets alone struggled to reach. A striking wow fact. The launcher's simplicity allowed infantry to carry both rifle ammo and grenade rounds in the same pouches, making firepower dense at the squad level. The M203's ubiquity also influenced training and logistics. Units learned to integrate grenade arcs and wind into immediate action drills. Over time, some armies moved to underbarrel launchers with side-loading or standalone systems, but the M203's impact is obvious. It made the standard infantry rifle a layered weapon system in one hand. That integration showed just how far the AR platform could extend a soldier's toolkit, and it inspired niche adaptations that followed, including designs meant for enclosed vehicle use. M231 Firing Port Weapon. The M231 is proof that the AR design can be bent into highly specific roles. Built in the mid-1980s for the Bradley fighting vehicle, this variant existed to be fired through the troop compartment's small firing ports. It's essentially a stripped-down M16A1 with a short, heavy 19-inch barrel, no stock, and a simple pistol grip so a crewman could operate it inside the cramped hull. To control muzzle flash and pressure inside an armored vehicle, engineers fitted a distinctive conical muzzle brake. The weapon was fed from a 100-round linked drum, giving crews a high sustained output without constantly reloading. Its cyclic rate was unusually high, roughly in the 700 to 800 rounds per minute neighborhood, so the M231 could pour out a lot of lead in very short bursts. Useful for suppressing threats while remaining buttoned up. What surprises many viewers is how practical and odd the gun felt at once. It wasn't designed for infantry as much as for survivability and crew protection. In combat, a Bradley crew could respond to ambushes or return fire without exposing themselves above the hatch. The M231 also doubled as a dismount weapon in a pinch. A soldier could shoulder it briefly if forced out of the vehicle. The wow here is its economy of design, minimal stock, special muzzle brake, and unique feed system, all to solve one tactical problem. The M231 highlights a recurring theme. The AR pattern isn't a one-size-fits-all rifle. It can be radically adapted for platform-specific duties. After that vehicle-centric experiment, the broader carbine question returned to center stage and led straight to the ubiquitous M4. M4 carbine. The M4 is where the AR-15's form factor finally became the modern infantry standard. Officially adopted in 1994, the M4 took the tried-and-true M16 layout and shrank it into a combat-ready carbine, a 14.5-inch barrel, carbine-length gas system, and a 6-position telescoping stock that let soldiers tighten in tight spaces or lengthen for optics and body armor. That shorter barrel and collapsible stock shaved roughly 8 inches from overall length and dropped pounds from the package, radically improving maneuverability in vehicles, buildings, and helicopters. The M4 retained direct impingement operation, chrome-lined chambers, and compatibility with standard 30-round magazines. So logistics stayed simple, even as tactics changed. On the ground, the M4's impact was immediate. Urban fights, convoy operations, and close assault work demanded a compact platform, and the M4 delivered rifle lethality in a package that handled like a carbine. Another wow moment. Manufacturers and soldiers began tuning feed ramps, gas port sizes, and buffer weights, specifically to keep the M4 reliable on shorter gas systems, small engineering tweaks that made a big battlefield difference. The M4's flat-top receivers and rail readiness also accelerated the optics revolution. Soldiers routinely ran red dots, magnified optics, laser aiming modules, and suppressors. By the 2000s, many frontline units transitioned from full-length M16s to M4s because the trade-off, slightly reduced long-range ballistics for much greater agility, fit modern combat. The M4's success then prompted a tougher offshoot, demanded by units that burned through rounds under sustained operations. M4A1 Carbine. The M4A1 is the M4's combat-hardened evolution, driven largely by special operations feedback. Around the late 2000s, units asked for a carbine that could take repeated sustained fire without overheating or failing. The M4A1 answered with a heavier, SOCOM profile barrel set as SOCOM that resists throat erosion and heat-induced accuracy loss under high round counts. Crucially, the A1 replaced the 3-round burst with a true full-auto fire control group, restoring continuous automatic fire on demand, a preference for some close quarters and suppression roles. Additions like ambidextrous controls, reinforced extractor and bolt components, and compatibility with H-series buffers improved reliability with short gas systems and suppressed fire. Operationally, the M4A1's robustness paid off in high-tempo missions. Units using suppressed or suppressed-heavy configurations appreciated the stiffer barrel and stronger internals when firing long strings of rounds. A notable wow detail, the M4A1's upgrades were driven directly by units that actually shot thousands of rounds per month. The parts selected were those that survived real-world torture tests rather than bench hypotheticals. That pragmatic process shortened the gap between prototype fixes and fielding. By the 2010s, the M4A1 had become the standard for many combat units, showing the AR family's capacity to evolve under pressure. The result? A compact modular carbine that could be both maneuverable and amazingly durable in the hands of troops who needed it most. 30-round magazine. In the early years of the AR15 M16 platform, the standard magazine held only 20 rounds, mirroring the capacity of the M14 rifle it replaced. However, real-world combat experience in Vietnam quickly revealed its limitations. Facing enemies armed with AK-47s and their reliable 30-round curved magazines, U.S. troops needed greater sustained firepower to maintain effective suppressive fire without frequent reloads. By mid-1966, the U.S. military formally requested a higher capacity magazine. Colt developed prototypes in 1967, testing a slightly curved 30-round design that fit the M16's straight mag well. After refinements, production began in late 1967, with initial batches issued around 1969, primarily to special operations units and carbine variants like the XM177. Each rifleman gained 10 extra rounds ready to fire, allowing squads to pin down opponents longer in close-quarters jungle fights or ambushes. The minor drawbacks, slightly increased weight and bulk, were deemed worthwhile for the boosted lethality. Gradually, through the early 1970s, the 30-round magazine became the official standard as older 20-round stocks wore out and new production ramped up. This upgrade not only enhanced infantry effectiveness, but also influenced NATO's later adoption of the Staaag magazine standard set as, today, nearly every M16 and M4 in U.S. service relies on the 30-round magazine as default, a direct legacy of Vietnam-era lessons. It stands as one of the most impactful yet simplest approvals the military made for the AR-15 platform, proving how a modest change can deliver outsized battlefield advantages. From the jungles of Vietnam to today's modular carbines, this evolution shows how small design changes reshaped modern warfare. If you want to understand why the AR platform still dominates battlefields worldwide, keep exploring its history, variants, and the hard lessons learned in combat.